This is Bam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Shebana Coelho. And you're a creativity coach, performer, and writer. Welcome to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So it's always fun to talk to new people. We talk to people live pretty much every day on the podcast. And you're an award-winning writer, performance artist, and a facilitator of workshops. So, like, you're in New Mexico at the time. This time, that's where
Yeah,
you're.
I'm in New Mexico on a winter's night. I mean, yeah, I guess it's winter.
Yeah. I'm in New Hampshire, so it's New England. We're
Oh,
supposed to be getting snow pretty soon, so we'll have a Thanksgiving.
that's great.
But couple questions we always ask every guest before we get into your story. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Oh, so you the easy questions first.
Yeah, yeah,
What motivates me? I think I have this phrase that I've been using for maybe 20 years. It's called like following what calls to me. It's I can tell you it's like the most mysterious thing. I know it has to do with um certainly art and creativity, expressing yourself, using the language of the senses, loving nature. So I think what motivates me is that I've had these moments where I felt so free to be all the light and the dark that I am. And it gets very heady, and you want to share it with more people too. So that's really, I would say, what motivates me is sort of sharing freedom.
I think that seems to be a common theme. I've been interviewing artists since like 2016. A lot of songwriters, poets, authors, painters, film directors, and they all seem, they always want to have their voice, and they feel they given themselves the permission structure, unlike other people in life that feel that they don't have permission. Like creative people give themselves permission to have that vulnerability presented to the whole world as their art.
It's a journey to give yourself that permission, and it doesn't always, it comes and goes, that permission you give yourself.
Yeah,
uh it's like, and it's not you, and this is the part, it doesn't feel like it's you, it feels like something is coming through. I really do believe in
like a
that.
muse.
Yeah, like a channel. Like, I think, humans have been creating art since we were human, since we
Mhm.
became conscious of ourselves, that desire. So I think we are all artists, and the need is very strong in all of us, I feel.
Yeah, I think I've always had that need to tap into the muse, or what we call like the universe. The Victorian poets called it the muse, but a lot of people call it the universe. And
Yeah,
like a lot of artists will say they can channel. They're like they can, they have skills as artists, no matter whatever the skill is, but they can tap into like the outside world and their inner world and kind of merge it. And
yeah,
and that's like something that I think every human being can do that. That certain people don't give themselves permission, and they don't realize like during your everyday life you do that. You might not think you're doing it, but you do to function on the planet. You every day you do this. It's like whether or not you realize it. It's like artists, I think, tap into it like, oh, I can do this.
yeah. And I feel like we're all storytellers, I say, and especially in the workshops that I do, and even to people that I just meet, I will say that, like, when you tell a story, we're telling stories all the time. We're deciding on all these things that you might learn about, say, when you're writing, like the point of view and the tone, but we do all of these things naturally. And I even feel like, even if you're writing your memoir, even when you're writing about yourself, you're still creating something on a page, because
Yeah.
that character didn't exist till you began to create it on the page. So I really, yeah, I really feel like I believe in creativity without borders more and more. I've been trying to figure out that question that you asked me, what motivates me? What I was like, and when people often ask you, who is your audience? Who is your niche audience? Who? And I began thinking, well, it's true, there are certain kinds of people I see is like repeat, people who my work seems to resonate with. And also I love seeing creativity. I love everybody. I love like I don't discriminate. I
Hmm.
would love to take creativity everywhere, especially to places that people don't expect it to be.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's the thing is like I've always believed in very kind of well expansive nature of art and to not always stay in my lane. And a lot of times when you're in the arts, there's all these canons. And when you're getting
Yes.
trained to be people who say, well, you got to stay in, like, if you're a jazz guy, stay in bebop because that's real jazz. And then if you go experimental or you go into fusion, they kind of, oh, no, 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 that's not the way. And you're like, well, that's, Miles Davis is the preeminent, you know, purveyor of bebop. And then he went into fusion and
Yeah.
people didn't like it. Dylan was a folky and then he went electric and people didn't like it.
Yes.
But innovators will push even when they were in one place, they go to another place and then people don't like it initially, but people feel uncomfortable because I think people like safety in knowing something's a certain way. And when you push on that outer limit, of what people's expectations are, then they don't, they're like, oh, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I've always like, I like to be in that place, and people are like, "What are you doing?"
It is, I find it, I don't know if I'm going through a particular season in my life that, sometimes I feel it's harder to keep stepping out of the box. Like sometimes it gets easier. Like it's easier for me to take big steps. For example, if you say to me right now, go to the Arctic, I will go because I love
You like the
to
challenge.
travel. Well, I
Yeah.
love the travel of wild landscapes like that. I've always had a thing for that. And though, then if you will say to me, but listen, Shabana, sometimes if you want to build something, if you want to build, say, a community around your work, it will really help to consistently or inconsistently, but in some way, stay in one place and like
Mhm. Kinda built.
get to know people and do things in person, because I got so used to doing things online,
Mm.
everything online since the pandemic. And now I'm in this small rural part of New Mexico, and it is true, I'm writing for the local paper, and going to all these events, and I had forgotten, honestly, how good it feels to just go out into new experiences every week and meet people and talk to them and be around them. And so I guess I am enjoying, or I am exploring both structure and you know out of out of structure
Yeah, you
right
have
now.
this, like, statement about your work, how far away is close, and maybe it, like, sounds that we're kinda tapping into a little bit of that. Maybe you can talk more about, like, what that means to you.
Sure, I'd be glad to. Like when I was 33, I left New York where I had been living for many years, and I went to Tierra del Fuego, which is the southernmost point, I mean, right before Antarctica.
Mhm.
It's and it was like something I had longed to do, and that was a whole 2 years of travel, Argentina, Peru, Bolivia, Mexico, and then the big adventure, I spent a year and a half in Mongolia.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was to record the sounds of everyday life in nomadic communities. And I spent 4 different seasons in the countryside. It's called the Hudu, living with nomadic families. And I also stayed in the city, Ulaanbaatar, learned some Mongolian. Uh, and it was like the big experience of my life, like the biggest adventure of my life to go so far away. And like, actually, I remember before I went, I was getting to Mongolia, I was getting, all these doctor's appointments and just getting checked out, and
Mhm.
I
Yeah, 'cause you're
went,
traveling.
Yeah, because I didn't know it was in 2007, and I knew I was going to be in the countryside, especially, so I didn't know. So I went to, I think it was an optometrist, and he said, well, everything looks good. There's some little thing in your eye, but you can get it checked up in a couple of months. It's not like you're going to, I don't know, Mongolia or something.
Yes, you are.
And I'm like, and I was going to the epitome of far away kind of place when people's like, Mongolia, it's so far away. So I was in Mongolia for a year and a half, and it was really such a beautiful thing. Like, so much felt like family after that time. And a couple of years later, I was writing an essay about that time. And I was reflecting on how Mongolia, like, it was like a metaphor. It was so far away, and then it became like family, and it felt like a metaphor, like a symbol for so much, like, that culture or that person that you think you cannot connect to, they're closer than you think. And then, because I had always had an ambivalent relationship with my own creativity, I took it, I thought about it that way too. There's so many things. Your creativity is that you think is so far away. It's right here under their skin, and it shows up, especially when you invite it with gentleness and a sense of play, and you're around kindred spirits. And so that's I without sort of branding myself, that's become the name of all my work. It's not like an official organization, but I have a website, Far Away is Close, and I often will, if I do performances, I will say Far Away is Close presents.
Wow. Well, that's a good theme. I mean, I think it kind of shows the universality of like humanity. So people, think people are different, but when you actually, like, I lived in Japan for 2 years and got in, into being a Westerner all my life, to live in Japan with my family for 2 years, living in Tokyo and actually not traveling back and forth, that's staying there. It was an amazing experience. And then you just realize, even though there's differences in a Western and Eastern culture, especially with Japanese culture and certain like mythology and Shintoism and all kinds of things that are like just different mindsets. There's commonality just in the human experience. And that is like, get far away as close is a good term for it.
Thank you. I'm fascinated by it. I don't know that much about Japan, but I went through periods where I was studying Zen and trying to meditate, and I've been in Zen monasteries in the US. But I love the not the aesthetic, but I have all these scrolls, of mountains and one lone monk.
Yeah.
And I've read that they were the kind of scrolls paintings done in meditative states.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like the Shintoism is just the whole spirit animals, very much like, I'm part Native American, like Cherokee, Blackfoot. And there's a lot of similarities I started to see in Japanese culture, in Native American culture in North America. There's certain things with the spirit animals that are kind of like, wow, this developed separately, but it's like common concepts. And so they were like, wow, in terms of like how indigenous people viewed the earth and
Yes.
viewed animals and viewed just our role in the universe is versus, maybe a Calvinistic kind of Christian points of view versus more indigenous points of view, like in terms of like spirit animals and the earth being important and not thinking that we're above the earth or above the animals, above the wind, above the fire, above the water. Is like this idea is that, like, wow, that I was always more gravitating to that anyway, because it felt more like it made more sense to me. When I was in Japan, it's like, well, this made a lot of sense to me. I actually had an alignment with it.
Because we live closer to the earth in encounter with it. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to go to Mongolia is what I wanted an everyday experience of that immense landscape. The steppe in Mongolian is called the Tal. And the land is called Gazer. And I remember towards the end of my time there, when I was, it takes a while to make yourself, like, in Japan, you're kind of you're everywhere in a new culture. You're very young. You're like a young child in it. You're listening a lot, getting lost a lot. Um, I was like, the thing I want to find out more about, I said, was what was called Gazarin Domog, which was like legends of the land, stories, like stories,
Hmm.
myths of
Yeah.
the land. And it was more like, I don't know, it was just it was just fascinating. Like the feeling, like Mongolia is also a horse culture. So like watching people's connection with horses, mur, there's a horsehair fiddle called the Murren Her. There's songs that mimic all the different paces of all the different movements of a horse.
Wow.
Uh, so when you
The
hear
more
Mongolian
connect-
music,
yeah,
the gallop and the trot and the this and the that, and
we lose connection to that with all of our mechanized what means to travel. But when you're connected to an animal like a horse, and then you're connected to the land and you're connected to the, I think it connects you more back to, to Gaia when you're more aligned than using, you know, a car or motorcycle or, if you actually have an animal that you're kind of symbiotic, um,
yeah.
that is just like a different experience, that I think we lost, when we lost horses in our culture. But
The myth and the reality of it, because I mean there was the myth of the horse, the songs of the horse, poems about the horse. My favorite song in Mongolian was this kind of folk song that was said, "Mini mini av ado chinhun, mini av ado chinhun." My father is a horseman. My father is a singer, and I'm saying, so there was that, and then there was as part of my getting to know a horse, I said to myself once, I want to learn properly to ride a horse, so I'm gonna go for 3 days from one part of Mongolia to another on a horse with
oh wow,
guides.
God, wow, you have to try it out.
Yeah, I had done it as a child, but like, I didn't really know. And this was my way of, instead of taking one of the worst roads in northern Mongolia, going on it in a car, I said, "Oh, I'm going to go on a horse." And I thought the reality of being connected to those animals is that I did not think my knees would hurt, but that's the thing that hurts most.
Wow,
Like,
because you're not exercising that part of your body.
yeah,
You
I
you
think
don't
you're
realize.
you're
Yeah.
holding it tight. I don't know, maybe I don't know what, but I think other people, once I told them, they were like, yeah, that's the thing that hurts most. I mean, your butt hurts and all that, but my knees, just like in this, and like the horse, because I'm in the steppes of Mongolia, it is in its own place. So even though I had like this very gentle horse that was supposed to be gentle and slow, when we were going through forests and stuff, and then but when it came upon the open steppe, it just
You want
went.
to go
It would,
fast. You just go.
yeah.
Just wanted to go. Like, yeah, this way it has its own mind. It's like it's a different thing.
So I guess I was like, that was the myth and the physicalness, like the
Yeah,
spirit and the
that's
flesh.
but that's illuminating. Like you do need to have a different type of you know, like I don't know, physical exercise is like you're not just being passively carried around. You actually have to get yourself in shape if you're going to be on the animal. And people probably lost sight of it. They might not realize it unless you're like an athlete and you're on horses all the time. You probably figured it out, but like a lot of people probably wouldn't even know that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. When I was there, I also met these two, I think they were Danish women, and they said they had been horse people all their lives. They had learned to ride horses since they were, and they said, we came to Mongolia because we wanted to go get back to some kind of basic or some kind of elemental, a different kind of way to know a horse. They said, like, we felt we had lost something, and we felt like there was something very basic is the wrong word, but I'm saying elemental, something
Mhm.
lost in the way, in that encounter with horse, because there were songs sung to a horse. there's so much engagement with animals
Culture.
and music
Mm.
actually in Mongolia. The way that, like, there's a song that I remember this spring, I was staying with the family, so it was calving season, and there were a lot of sheep and goats and all of that being born. And there was one occasion I remember when there was like a calf who had lost its mother, and a ewe that had lost its calf and lamb. So the family I was staying wanted to get them together, that they could find each other, and a nurse that the
Mm.
lamb would nurse this ewe had lost, and they would sing. So to do that, you may have seen like the story of the weeping cow, but there, and it's a song. It's like do go do go do go do go do, and like that they sang. It was amazing. Monjago was the wife of the
It's a lot of
family. That was
culture. Yeah.
amazing to see.
Well, that's where you would actually taping a lot of this, right? You would getting like you would take an audio of like
Yeah, I have that. If you go, it's called On the Move in Mongolia. I made a radio documentary with, well, maybe it's audio only, but then also there's a version that has images,
oh wow.
because I didn't want to video felt too much for me to carry around, you
Yeah, it's
know.
hard. Like audio
And
is fine. I mean, I think you can capture a lot with audio that leaves a lot to imagination. And
yes,
it's a different like radio. I still love radio. I like
yes,
radio plays. I like to listen to old radio plays from the 50s and stuff because like there's a lot, like when you read, your mind can imagine the scene. And
that's
sometimes
right.
it's actually really important not to be given everything.
That's right. That is what I felt. I do love audio too. I did radio as well. I produced, and I want to do, I have this idea. I want to do a radio album. I mean, audio album of my poetry, like maybe publish it in a book, but I really want to do,
The audio
yeah, the
performance.
audio. And like I had, like, at that time I had a mini disc player. Do you remember those? They were
Yeah,
like this little square, and they fit in your
very
hand.
small. Yeah, very small.
And I could put them in my pocket, and I would have like two decent mics, but they were light, and I could go everywhere with that and just two batteries.
Well, that's cool because then you're able to portable record. There's a lot of cool portable recording devices. They're small now, but that's a really cool idea because like the idea of field recordings, even for musicians, I like to go out in the woods and tape a stream or tape the sound of the birds and just the wind going through the trees. It's useful when you're building like soundscapes to
That's
actually
right.
have nature recordings, and it's kind of part of like atmospheric music that pulls in real nature. Because like what like when you describe the singing, the horse, people singing to the horses, and that whole culture is like you could write about it, but to hear it is probably like the best way to understand it.
And Mongolia is a singing culture. If you go to Mongolia, take a song, you will be asked to sing, and it will be a wonderful thing to share any kind of song.
Wow,
It's
that's
such a
very
singing
cool.
culture. There were moments. There's one. It's on my website. One of my website. It's called Stories from the Steppe, and there's a link on my. But
Mhm.
where I, like, all the voices, like I would be in all these moments, and someone would come and suddenly start singing. And there was one night in the Gobi Desert in autumn, when we're sitting outside a ger with the family that I'm staying with, um, and Sena and Deme. That's who the couple was. There were camels were there, other
Mhm.
camels, and after they'd been milked, and suddenly in the dark, on a motorcycle with the headlights broken, comes these two men who were friends of theirs, and eventually they sang. And the one of the men who sang, they had known in high school as a singer, and he sang the song about the eastern moon. And I have to say that was one of the most beautiful experiences, because he began to sing, and then everybody joined in, and like it was a beautiful harmony. I mean, like, everyone's voice
There, wow.
was there, because there is so much singing.
Well, they have permission in their culture that that's a part of their that's just a part of their whole being. Like there's a lot of old cultures, the indigenous is like singing and music is integral to like a lot of tribal culture within Native Americans. It's like it's just part of it. It's just part of what it is. And sometimes people like well try to separate music and make it for like points in time. But some cultures it's like very integrated, and it's like it's really part of it, and it's not just meant for certain moments. It's like you can share it like anytime. You know, so that's it. That's really interesting that you found a culture that still values that, like that art.
Mm. Yeah, it was like I said, it was the adventure of my life. To be in Mongolia, it was a gift. It was such a gift.
Yeah, because it's really interesting about the whole with like ideas of like a lot of societies have been colonized and people have kind of pulled out um the active contribution of the indigenous peoples and kind of minimized it and
Yes,
act like that and it's sad because like the history of the world is based on a lot of these indigenous cultures that were disrespected, and we have historians that understand it and are coming with like a Darwinistic point of view. They're actually coming in and realizing, oh, there were mistakes made,
yeah.
and now we need to actually address like this stuff that's valuable here that we're not the only the other cultures that came in didn't see it and dismiss things, and it's good to go back and actually take another look.
Mm. Yeah, I feel like what's happened, like it's not only what was done, like I just because a lot of my work is about colonization. I'm from India, and the India was colonized by everyone you can imagine, but the British were there the longest for about 100 years, and so there was people say, well, what's the point? Like everyone invaded everyone else all over the whole history of the world is a history
Mhm.
of invasions. What made colonization different was that I think Trevor Noah has a really great bit about it where he's like, you take everything and then you make the people who you conquered like you, so that they're fragmented, separated from their own culture. And for me, the journey has been realizing I speak English so well is because as part of their education policy in India in the 1800s, the British decided that it was best to create a class of Indians who were Indian in blood and color. I'm quoting Lord Thomas Babington Macaulay in a book called The Minute on Education. He said, it's best that we create a class of Indians who are Indian in blood and color, but English in intellect, morals, and values. And I come from that created class. I come
It's like the assimilation. Like you have to overcome maybe more than assimilation, more kind of forced.
it becomes like you become more British than the meaning like you take
Yeah.
on all the characteristics of who you value those things. So I grew up English is my first language. There's significant amount of Indians. I don't know how many, but like we speak English really well, and English is valued in school. We had elocution competition, so we could learn to speak really well
Hmm.
and do poetry and have competitions. What that does is fragment you from your own culture because it creates these classes within classes. So I grew up thinking I was better than other Indians who didn't speak English as well as I did. Never mind, they spoke 5 different Indian languages.
Yeah.
And only now I'm, in my 50s, am I, well, I mean, I spoke broken Hindi growing up, but now like I'm in my plays I'm speaking and I'm learning to speak poems in Urdu, which is a language that came when the Muslims who built the Taj Mahal came to India. And
Hmm.
you might say, so some people might say, well, that was a colonization, and I don't know enough of the history, but I do know that there seemed to be more of a melding of things, that is to say,
Melding, not just kind of top down, not a top down saying English is the primary, and
yeah,
and everything else is like not at the
yeah.
level.
Urdu is a mix of so many languages, of Hindi, of Persian, of Arabic, And so it has a different, in Urdu, it has a different sound, but I know speaking it, something happened to me. I feel differently when I say, once I was a stone, मैं एक बार पत्थर थी, मैं एक बार पत्थर थी मगर अपने आप को खो गई. I was a stone and I lost my center, which is a translation of a flamenco song. So I always mix things up anyway.
Yeah.
So
But
it's
I think it's, I think it's core to actually, the original languages of indigenous peoples is like, it's a whole history that, a lot of times it seems like the colonizers wanted to kind of erase. Like if you go into the US and you look at all the indigenous tribes, it was like a massive erasure
Yeah,
of
it's a
all these.
genocide.
Yeah, it's a total genocide of the culture and any value of it. And it's not even taught, in schools at all.
Yeah.
But about the value of any of the cultures and all the different tribal systems that are all over the US. In the Northeast is massive amounts of smaller tribes, not just Cherokee and Blackfoot. There's like very small tribes that are like spread out like Africa, like a lot of different tribes within small areas. And, there's like that's all lost and wiped out and no respect for it. And now people are going back and like, oh, you know, and then some people even to this day, there's no apologizing. They think that they did the right thing. And I'm like, really?
It is
Like,
crazy, isn't it? That's why I think like all those, it's all alive. So what I was going to say is like those faraway colonizations, as you're saying, they're alive in us. They explain so much of our disconnection to each other and the earth, and also what people and trauma and intergenerational trauma, what people are struggling with still. Where I live in New Mexico, there's 19 tribes that are called pueblos by the Spanish, because the Spanish were the colonizers here, the conquistadores here. And then the Americans came as settlers, so they were kind of colonized twice. So there's 19 kind of tribes that, and I actually teach creative writing in a tribal college in a tribe called Zuni, and it's but yeah, in New Mexico, it's like it's like, doesn't feel like, it feels like being somewhere else, even though it's a U.S. state. I just mean like the feeling, because the history is a little bit different, and but it has a feeling because there's still songs and dances, and you can go, and there are some social dances that are open to the public. So there are still indigenous people here, tribes, 23 tribes, including the Navajo, the Apache, the Ute, where songs are sung and danced on the land.
so they're still, the oral histories are still there.
Yeah. And so I think that's why maybe New Mexico has a particular a feeling.
Yeah, because they kept it. If you keep that vibration, like I'm a very strong believer in like a vibration that's inside of people and cultures, and it's like a macrocosm level. If you keep that societal oral history of handing down the song, handing down the language, handing down the rituals, the history, then it stays alive, and then that vibration is actually going to be around that area where that's being kept. And so you're probably picking up on it, being in tune with it. You can feel it if you're more, willing to feel those things. Some people put up walls and they can't feel stuff like that, but other people that are more in tune, then you're picking it up. It makes sense to me, but
I pick it up and I appreciate it, and I also sometimes kind of feel sad about the brokenness, the broken roots in my story, in a way. I saw, I think, a documentary about a Hawaiian storyteller who had been born into, like, she comes from other generations of storytellers and activists, not just both, And when she was very young, maybe I think she must have been like 14, 15, she began telling stories and poems and of her culture, of that, that was such a great injustice, how Hawaii became part of the US, about the queen being, the queen being under house arrest in her own palace, who chose not to kind of fight because she didn't want to. I mean, it's crazy, and like Dole and for pineapple and commerce
Yeah,
and
well,
all of that.
our history is all based on industrial kind of robber barons, running around oligarchs, telling people that it's about freedom, but it's freedom for them to
Yeah, they
do
didn't want
whatever.
to pay. They didn't want to pay taxes on pine
Yeah, it's
on.
all about their freedom from a capitalist point of view, but not from,
Yeah.
and it's very top down. If it's another culture, if it's a religion, if it's society other than what you understand, it's inferior and it can be pushed down or wiped out with no respect. It's really like a lack of respect for humanity that doesn't look like you, that doesn't talk like you, that doesn't. It's kind of low minded to me. It's not very high minded to have that kind of point of view, right? It's kind of very low level thinking that it's
Mm.
about the common denominator like power, wealth, access, control. It's like, is that really what's valuable? But that tyranny's always existed on the planet in that kind of form. But you said in different eras, people didn't totally wipe out the culture. They kept
So
some.
it still challenges. I guess there's two things that I wanted to say. One, I wanted to say, like, when I see sometimes these cultures that, even though they have so many, there's the issues of surviving in the world, because we do live in a society that doesn't value things that are of value. Slowing down, connecting to nature. I don't know, and maybe that's my question for you. Is like, how where's the hope in us kind of returning to that, or I mean, I
Well, I
try
think,
and do it in my life,
yeah, I
and
think
I
the hope is that we live in a world where people think technology is the answer, but I would argue that Gaia, the planet itself, is going to teach a lesson to people that don't understand the history of the planet. The history of the planet is that we go through massive changes, right? But sometimes we don't live in an era where that's happening, right? We have some level of stability. Human beings have gone and created potential to have an ice age and a warming all happen like at once, right? So we're going to have something happen that normally doesn't happen for millennia, and your tech might not save you, right? So you might have to get to understand the planet where it is and have to deal with it because it's going to be probably more powerful than anything a human can do. And
mm,
I think those are going to be the lessons that the planet's going to teach you a lesson. It's kind of, it's a very kind of old thinking in terms of like in the Native Americans, like what the earth is going to teach you.
mm.
Whether you want to learn it, you will learn it. It will happen.
I find that curiously comforting, in the sense that it's then my job, or my task, is to pay attention to what is being taught to me, what is being shown to me, more and more. Like, I try to. I live in a rural area. There's mesas and trees and mountains, and even a lake nearby, and so it's really beautiful to be around uh, such unbroken lineages, in a way, both in nature and in communities. And also, it makes me sometimes sad for what was lost in my story, in my
Mm,
lineage, in
your
my
lineage, yeah.
who would I have been if I had grown up speaking Hindi and Urdu.
Or lost opportunities to have that that
Just oh
autonomy.
yeah, and then I come back to it and be like, there, this is your journey. It's your
Well, it's
journey.
kind
We
of
all have our
karmic.
own journeys. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like if from a Buddhist perspective, it's like you are on the path you're on, right? And you were probably meant to be on this path because it gives you a different perspective. And
Yes.
so you are where you're supposed to be. The people
Yes.
might not feel that, because the people are like, well, I don't feel like I'm at where I'm supposed to be. But but it's like once you open yourself up to opportunity, like being on a path doesn't mean you have to be like you're frozen on the path. You're on a path. So you're gonna kind of go through it and learn. You
Yeah.
would hope that you learn from the things that happen.
Yeah.
And It's like whether or not people listen to people or listen to animals or listen to the wind or listen to earth. I think a lot of times in the modern world, people don't listen at multiple levels.
Yeah.
And it's really when you start to listen to everything and start to really try to process it before you start to speak. I think that's like the core of like
Mm.
we getting older, you start to learn a little bit about maybe you should listen more.
Yeah. And like when I think of also that sadness, I remember when I saw this storyteller who began telling stories when she was very young and came from an unbroken lineage, and the power she felt and the injustice she felt about what had happened to her people. And I thought of how my journey, in a way, I did many things, but I feel like once I started doing plays, like this play I did called The Good Manners of Colonized Subjects about my story, I really kind of was reborn. Something really opened up in me. I love being on a stage and doing my poetry and dance,
Yeah. You can
and
actualize like that.
yeah, when I felt sad in seeing someone who had done it from very young, I also felt I needed to write about that sadness because there are other people like me who feel that. And that was an important moment where I'm like you were saying, this is my part. Like that feeling that I'm feeling is who I am, what is coming through me. It speaks to people who grew up as I did, maybe, who came late in life, say, to a certain passion, and just to write from that place, because
Well,
it
that's
will
your
resonate.
well, that's probably like that's your role, your path is like you had to be on that path to get to a certain point to see that truth, to see what you're seeing. And then the law of attraction is like you have your gift to be able to relay that as an artist and to convey that in a way that will kind of pull other people. But they don't recognize it when you put it in the world, then they say, "Well, I feel that way," and then they get pulled toward it, and then they realize, "Oh, I have permission to feel that way. I have permission to dive into that," and then it'll cause more people to be reflective and start thinking about, well, what can we do about this? Like, what can you do it at a microcosm level? What can you do at a macrocosm level? What can you do to kind of take you see the sadness and express it, and then say, well, what can we do in the world so that people can you know dive into it, but also figure out a way to process it. And that's what an artist does is figure out how to cathartically take what's in them and push it out to the world, right?
Oh, that sounds great. Thank you. It's what I needed to hear. I mean, I just feel I've been doing a lot, and I haven't been on a stage in a little bit, And I just the other day I saw this movie about I got what was it? It's a French film. Yes, about someone who's teaching in a prison, and they do Waiting for Godot. He gets a group of prisoners to do Waiting for Godot, but that whole process of just embodying something, and like that feeling. And I was like, I felt that feeling you feel when everything in you is like that Spanish word limpia, like clean, just clean, like why you're here, And I just
Yeah,
felt like
find your purpose.
I was
Yeah.
like, okay, whatever. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing something. It's time to get back on the stage.
Well, it's that feeling when you're an artist, like being a musician, like being on a stage and performing is kind of where we want to be, like
Yes.
all the time. And everything we were doing is kind of building toward trying to get to that, so I can actually have a community that gets what I'm doing, right? That's what every musician is trying to get that audience to understand. Why am I at the keys? Why am I at the keys playing this? Why am I on the guitar doing this? Because I'm trying to find that tribe of people that get what I'm doing. Not that I want to get big, but I want people to understand it and it's just put in the world is a way to reinforce. It's like, yeah, there's a reason why I do this, and it's not just for money. It's for connection. It's for feeling. It's like just playing in front of people with 5 people, 10 people, 100 people, whatever. Just to be able to do it, it brings joy just to do it.
Yeah.
You know? And I
And
think that's what we want to be, is like where you can feel that joy,
it's true. It's true. Feel the joy. And I just want to more and more, I kept saying, I just want to dance under trees and I want to see what comes and I want to see what movements the wind makes my hands go. And like what would happen in different landscapes? What do the stones sing if I
Mhm.
sang, if I go into the stone? And it's like maddening. It's actually maddening in the sense that like there's so much I don't even know where to begin. And as I'm sitting here, I'm like, where do I begin? And I think I begin with this poem that I wrote about ravens some months ago. And I always knew that it's a poem I needed to perform. And I know I want to put black on my eyes, but some like black earth or something, like
Mm.
some natural thing,
Thing,
just
yeah.
over here and just speak it till it feels what it wants to feel. And then maybe I'll record it. But the most important thing is first to do it,
Yeah. But it's kind of like when you go to I did a lot of open mic poetry, because being a songwriter, you start with poems and then to realize that songs are different than
Mm,
poems. They have different structure. But I love going to these. There was this place in Northampton, Mass, where you could do these open mics, and I would just try out a lot of my material. And I started to realize a lot of my poems were really like songs. And then I
mm,
started going into songwriting. But I mean, like initially when I was performing, I was getting people to understand. I found a place where I could actually just speak that way, and then there was an audience. There's like a coffee shop, a bunch of
yeah,
kids from like Smith College and Mount Holyoke, and they're all
yeah,
into that kind of hipster thing. So, but it was just like, yeah, they wanted to see people who were willing to do it, and it gave
mm,
you that kind of like the feeling of confidence. That's like there's all these college kids here. They want to hear this stuff, but they
yeah,
want to hear somebody come out and do it. And
mm,
then you get like, wow, this is cool. You know, whether it's like
yeah,
a 30 people or 100 people, it's like, but you were able to get out in front of people that got it. They got what you were trying to do, and
yeah.
that really motivated me to go further.
That's good. I'm gonna put all this in. Thank you. Wow, this has been so inspiring.
I think it's real important to kind of, if you feel something like that as an artist, you find a way to get to that stage. What it's a small stage or whatever, you find a way to get it out there. You record it and you put it out in the world. You do a little video clip. You find a club that will let you go do it, a coffee shop that lets you do it. You find some performance place that's into that. Because like if you look around, like there are places that want to do that, especially after
Yeah,
the pandemic, that people want to go out and they want to see happenings, artists play, venues, people like collectors, where people are like, yeah, we want to stop watching TV, stop watching cat videos,
yeah.
and like do something different.
Watch some Ravens dance.
Yeah, it's just important that like wherever art comes from, I'm always a big, big supporter of the arts. No matter what it is, I'll go check out anything. Like
Mm,
no matter what the genre is, what the type is, go check it. My daughter's an artist, my wife's an artist. It's like we're
mm,
really into. I just doesn't have to be popular art.
yeah.
It's actually probably better if it's underground. Like, I'm looking for the underground because that's what I like.
Yeah. Oh, this is so exciting. Yeah. Yeah, I've been doing writing and stuff like that, but I hadn't, it's just been a little bit since I did my thing, did my dance, did my
Oh, you
curious
gotta
mixture
do it
of
now.
poetry and dance, huh?
Feel it. You're gonna do it now. Yeah, you got the buzz.
I got the buzz. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. I feel the buzz.
It's important, and like a lot of people realize, like once we get that kind of feeling that you gotta get it out in the world.
Yeah.
Artists are driven to like you find a way.
Yeah.
Once you're on that path, once we get to our age, like I feel like I'm more able to actually make it happen. That when I was in
Yes.
my 20s, I was like, I don't know, I don't know, being like anxious. It's like, nah, I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah. That is true. And it is the other part now. I do feel like I kind of can stand the work a little bit more, the resilience that you need, and I mean, yeah, sometimes I feel that way. I can, and sometimes I'm not sure. But wow, I do feel like this is all good, all good buzz. Everything is buzzing. Oh,
Yeah, you just can't. You don't want to be silenced by your own fear, because that's why like everybody has this innate safety. There'll be a
Yeah.
way to be safe from the wolf at the door, and the wolf at the door could be like your ambition, right? So it's like you're scared of it, and so then you
Mm,
don't. And that's always like the artist trap. Like they sitting there with all these ideas, and they're, "Well, I don't know if I should do it. I don't know if I should pull the trigger. I don't know if I should really do it." If it's like you got to do it, like if it doesn't get out in the world, nobody's gonna know about it.
it's true. And I think I told you that my whole life changed when I invited fear to sit and have some tea with me. And I think it's time to invite it in and
Yeah,
have another cup of tea, because that's
yeah,
my
you
whole,
just gotta address it. You know,
yeah,
that's a hard thing, because you know, like criticism is very hard for any artist. You
yeah,
maybe be honest. It's like people give you the feedback, and although they love it, they hate it. But it's like it takes work to actually put it out.
yes,
And for all the people who say they don't like it, there's gonna be a tribe of people that do like it.
yes,
And I really don't. You take criticism, when it comes, right? And it says somebody doesn't give you anything constructive, and they say they hate it. Well, that doesn't, that's out there, but it's like if you can't tell me why, you just say you hate it. That's not
yeah,
valuable. But somebody can actually tell me where I could have made an improvement to give me some real feedback. That's like always, I'm always on the lookout for that. But I just like people who just hate because somebody took the time
yeah,
instead of just watching the cat video to go do something.
yeah,
Well, what's wrong with that? Why do you have to criticize their effort? It's like this, the
yeah.
people have a permission to say what they have their voice heard.
So after being an artist, I'm so much more conscious of being kind. Maybe not every artist has to be that way, but I am conscious about being kind because it just helps things grow.
Yeah, you don't have to be the critical voice, get red mark everything.
No.
Like like I had the teachers that the teacher that red marks everything, like doesn't make you want to come to class the next day, but the teacher that goes and tells you how
Yes.
great something was, and then kind of sneaks in the red marks,
Yes.
will actually make you want to come to class and do the work.
That's right.
So it's a different kind of psychology. So what's the point in just red marking everything and not pointing out what was good?
Yes.
It's just more of like a power trip to me. It's like, is it really valuable? Is it really going to bring stuff out to the world if you dim somebody's light? I
Yeah.
don't think it's a very positive way of operating.
I agree. I agree.
But I want to thank you for being on the show. It's just always time goes by so fast when we're talking like this.
Yes.
And I think things that we've talked about are super interesting. I want people to check out your website, and also just to hear the projects that you have. I'm going to check it out myself. I'm going to go back later
Yeah.
and dive into it. And I want to let everybody know is that the URL we have there is clickable within the podcast description. We've been live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And then if you go into the podcast description, you'll be able to click on that link. And you'll also be able to, on other platforms that we'll be on later, like Apple Podcast and Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, you'll be able to do the same thing.
Hey, this was great. And I love your Phantom Electric Ghost slash Keith.
That's my band. It's like that's actually my band.
Oh, Phantom Electric Ghost is your band.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I named it the same. My podcast is the same thing as the band.
Oh,
And I'm
I was
in my
like,
studio with all my synths and keyboards and stuff. But
got it. I love it. Well, I love it. This has been great. Thank you for doing what you do. It's really inspiring, and you're holding space for so many people to be free and be who they are and share their light with the world. And thank you for your insights. It's really great. We need to hear this. We really need to.
more voices are better than fewer voices. I think everybody should be heard.
Yeah.
And that's why we do this. We've been doing it since 2016. We're at episode 1195 with this one.
Wow.
And we've been around for a while, and we just want to bring stories to the world, because I think bringing stories to the world is oral history is what a podcast is. It's like we get to hear for
It's
an
true.
hour who a person is. And it's we're not trying to do an infomercial, we're not trying to do some ad. We're actually talking to a creative person and getting their story out there. So I want to thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you so much. This was great. Onwards with art.
Yeah, and
Take
if
care.
you ever want to come back, you just let me know. We have people come back for a second go around. So
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. Take care.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.